Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 1996 film The Craft. This is episode 414. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is once again back from Fantastic Fest, Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Hello.
Hello. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
We're the weirdos, mister.
That's right. The, that's so that echoes so perfectly, against like I am the one who knocks, and I just couldn't help but think of it. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Tony, you watched like 37 movies, and then you had to watch one more, which was
What do you do, Tony? I can picture the mic after you've watched 37 movies in a week. I watch another one.
Oh, it's not.
I'm going to Disneyland. This is fun to do. So, I watched movies after I came home and watched movies to wind down. So what?
Right.
I fall asleep to movies, so it's nothing new. But it is, when thrown out there that way, it is.
Yeah,
it does show me as a fairly ridiculous person in that respect.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, I've embraced it. I'm living with it. It's fine.
Yes.
Movies, more movies.
Okay. Okay, The Craft is a 1996 American teen supernatural horror film directed by Andrew Fleming from a screenplay by Peter Filardi and Fleming, based on Filardi's story. The film stars Robin Tunney, Fairuza Balk, Nev Campbell, and Rachel True. That's a heck of a cast, and it follows four outcast teenage girls at a Los Angeles parochial high school who pursue witchcraft for their own gain and subsequently experience negative repercussions. What a film. All right, let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, last week, Practical Magic, that was a movie that had it was like the gospel in your house. It was something that everybody loved. Is this a beloved film, or where does this sit for you? What are your opening thoughts?
I wouldn't call it a beloved film. I think it's got its enjoyable points. I honestly think it's a very iconic movie of the late 90s. I mean, I think I knew so many people who had the poster for this movie in their house. I think there's a lot of future goth kids of America who definitely worship Fairuza Balk in this film. I like it. I don't love it. I there's certainly parts of it that I think are unintentionally funny. I think there's parts of it that are I think this movie, it was trying to kind of be like when we watched The Lost Boys for this show a million years ago, it feels like. We talked a lot about how The Lost Boys was very much the zeitgeist vampire movie of its time. Like, it was just sort of soaking up the teen culture that was going on. This movie sort of attempts to be that, but for the 90s and with witches instead of vampires.
I had that same thought when they're on the beach. There's a point where we're on the beach and I was like, we're in Lost Boys territory now.
Yeah. And that has its good points and its bad points. It's certainly like Practical Magic, it's certainly fun to sort of revisit the 90s fashion and the 90s music and everything. I think the ending feels a little rushed, which I guess I will elaborate on when we get to that point. And I think there is some mixed messages about bad men in this movie, and which I'm sure we'll probably discuss at some point too. But yeah, like it, don't love it, still think it's fun, I guess, is where I fall on it.
Julia, I don't know. First time watching this film?
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed it a lot. I think there's a lot of interesting themes, some really, fun effects, and they're not like the best effects ever, but they're fun. So the characters are intriguing. There's a lot of kind of metaphor and symbolism going on that I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed I enjoyed learning about like kind of the behind the scenes and what was going on. And Jason and I watched a couple of behind the scenes kind of videos, and I was reading
Yeah.
IMDb stuff, so I have a few little tidbits to share as we talk about it. But yeah, I thought it was great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I had seen it. It definitely isn't like one that I watch a lot. It was kind of cool because Rain wanted to watch it with me, so she doesn't watch a lot of horror, so it's kind of cool. So that was fun. Yeah, I mean it is yet another time capsule movie. Like especially the soundtrack, it's just like extremely succinctly 96.
Yes.
In the best way, like, and that's not a knock. That's just like it when you have, however that happens, where you have a soundtrack that is like just a time capsule of an era. I'm fascinated by it. I love soundtracks. I think, for example, like the Shocker soundtrack or Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Those are ones that fit just like they're just this like distilled music of its time period. By this time, I wasn't listening to as much radio stuff, so but this has all these, and it's got some odd cuts from like famous bands of the time. I'd be really curious how many junior high and high schoolers went out and tried to find their local occult bookshop.
Sure.
Based off of this. I mean, it had
for the
to
sake of the
happen,
occult
like, a
stores,
lot.
I hope so. I hope that occult stores had
Like,
a big
For-
boom because of this.
Farissa Bach, actually, is that her name? Farissa, is it
Yes.
Bach?
Yes.
Yeah. She actually bought one during the making of this in a cult shop.
Sweet.
Oh wow. I mean, like I just, those are the kinds of things that I'm watching, not in its time. Kind of, I wonder what the uptick on that was. I'm sure there's probably some book scan numbers somewhere you could find. I think it's a fun movie. I think the DNA of Lost Boys that you mentioned, I think that's definitely part of it. And I think, interestingly though, what's kind of cool and it's flawed like a lot of movies, but I think the idea of women taking control and fight the system in this era is actually kind of cool, right? Like there's definitely a tipping point. Hey, watch out, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you do.
Mhm.
How absolute power corrupts absolutely, that kind of stuff. But the idea of, here's a bunch of people going through a lot of stuff and high school is unkind. Also, racist jerks being racists. Like you don't feel that sorry.
Yeah.
It's funny, they make a thing about the racism, and then as the movie was being promoted, they were like very racistly promoting, like they wouldn't bring the one person of color to, like they didn't invite her to the MTV Awards, they didn't invite her to different like interviews. There's all this stuff where it's just like she was ignored.
You're kidding me. Rachel Troost they just didn't invite her?
Yeah,
Oh
she
my
wouldn't like
God.
yeah,
How can she continue to be gracious? All these years later, she is so gracious when she talks about this movie. Like she'll say, I realized they didn't give me parents, they gave the other characters parents. They didn't give me a backstory other than people are racist. But I was like, honestly, you're lucky to have this movie. That's her statement now.
Jeez.
I guess that's not that gracious, but it's pretty gracious.
It's crummy when you see it, like, for reals. Because she's great in this. Like,
she's amazing.
She's a part, like, that's frustrating. But the ideas behind it, I think it's certainly like well worth putting on your spooky movie yearly spin, stream, however you want to think of it. But yeah, it's definitely ups and downs, but there is a decent amount to like, even in the problematic parts of 1996.
I want to hear about the problematicness when we get into it, because that just fascinates me. Thank you very much, Tony. I'm gonna just skip opening thoughts and go straight to a question, which is, I think this movie goes well with like Lost Boys, and just like Tony said. What
I think it goes
is
well
this?
I think it goes well with Heathers.
It goes
I
well.
mean,
Well,
yeah.
but my
I mean, you can by extension, all a lot of that. Yeah.
well, what I was wondering though is that there's a class of movie like Lost Boys and like this that are, we're a horror podcast, but we also do mysteries. We've done Agatha Christie mysteries and stuff. So we'll do anything. It is horror adjacent, and so I guess in the broadest segment, then yes, it's horror. But I just find it fascinating that there's this thing that is a kind of a movie that is sort of a sexy teenage movie that is not horror but has horror elements. I mean, isn't that wild? I don't even know what you call that genre.
This is more
Exactly.
of a horror movie than Practical Magic is.
Yes. Yes, indeed it is. Yes. Although
Yeah. I
once
mean, this
again,
movie has a
there's
person who's
spookiness, in Practical
yeah.
Magic. So it's kind of the same genre.
I would say that the
Yeah,
part
but
where
this
I would say
has like
the person with
people's
snake hands is probably pretty horror.
True. That's true.
yeah, and bugs crawling out of
Yeah.
everything, and
Yeah.
like this is, I mean, Practical Magic, I again, I do think it is horror adjacent. But I don't know that I would entirely call it a horror movie. I think last week I said that to me it was a fantasy film. This
That's
to
fair.
me is a horror movie with some sort of fantasy wish fulfillment kind of elements. But I mean,
When you get over
genre
to
is
like
often a wibbly wobbly kind of thing.
yes, that's
Mhm.
right. When they kill and bury Goran Visnak, and he's coming back, and he's emanating frogs into the ground and stuff like that. That's horror crap. That's some weird horror crap going on there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. No
and
argument.
so so there's this class of film that is like this, that's a little on the sweet side and will kind of veer, sort of just bump into horror, and that's about it. In sort of like
I don't
almost
know
like
that
a
I would
Halloween
say
special.
this movie is sweet, though.
I think there's a sweetness
This
to this
movie, I
movie.
don't know that I would say is on the sweet side.
It's not sweet like Practical Magic, that's
Really?
for sure.
A movie
Yeah.
that ends with Practical Magic is sweet. This movie ends with the friend group broken up, and one of the girls is in an insane asylum.
Well, that's
I
true.
think that is
Yeah.
By the way,
I'm with Drew, by the
called
way.
I
like
called
this
that
to
from
me
the
is
beginning. At the beginning, I was like, she's gonna end up in an insane.
But I'll bet you, in the same way that people will watch, like, they'll watch Chainsaw sometimes because it's a comfort food for them, which is, I find weird, but there you are. I'll bet you there were people who were like, I want to see my girls. I want to see them all together, and they'll watch this movie.
that's nostalgic, though. That's
true.
There's lots of people watch like horror movies for nostalgia. I will stump for this being more of a horror movie than Practical Magic. I will. I don't disagree. Like both of them belong on this podcast. But this one is more solidly like if Blockbuster Video was still a thing, and I worked at Blockbuster Video, and they were like, "Hey, Drew, shelve this movie," I would shelve it in the horror section.
I agree, and I
Yes.
want to go back to the Lost Boys thing for a second. I feel like this movie and Lost Boys, in many ways, are the same film. That they have a lot of similarities, like huge amounts of similarities. Where
yeah.
Jason Patrick in Lost Boys has arrived, and he immediately is adopted by the Lost Boys, and they're not called that, but that gang with Kiefer Sutherland as their leader, and he's very cool, and he's very seductive in the sense that you want to be like him, and you want to emulate him and everything, and that's going on here as well. There's a lot of differences. There's not the whole subplot with the little brother that's going on in Lost Boys and stuff like that. But like there are so many wonderful tropes here that you see again. And I wonder if some of the differences are based on gender. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I'm saying that out loud now for the first time, but I don't know if some of the reasons Lost Boy is different from The Craft is because of the gender of the characters. I don't know.
Before we
So
get off the topic of comparing it with Practical Magic, I want to say that I'm really glad that this film actually did the thing that I wished Practical Magic had done, which is to follow through on what happens when you wish that somebody would be in love with you or whatever. Because
yes,
in the first one, the lady comes, to the witches and says, I want this guy to want me so bad he can't stand it. And then I was waiting for that to come back with him just being like really kind of a predator and nothing happened with that. Well, that's what happens here is that Skeet Ulrich becomes the obsessive,
Right.
boyfriend type who's like, I have to have you, I have to be with you, and to the
Yeah, the
point,
only person who would say that it would be fun to have a stalker is somebody who's never had a stalker.
right.
And this movie, you're right. I mean, it's so interesting that they decided to explore that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
in
Well,
Practical Magic they
I
don't.
don't think it's interesting to explore it. I think it's weird that they didn't explore it in the first one. It's
Well,
like,
and
why
mind
didn't
you,
you?
by the way, it's later. Practical Magic is 3 years after this, but it doesn't matter. We watched them in different
Yeah.
orders, so but,
It does, I think this movie being a hedge more sinister in
yeah.
some ways, I think lends itself to the idea of the dark side of a love spell better.
Yes.
Also the fact that the characters are all teenagers,
Yeah.
and teenagers, I mean, everything is so monumentally important to teenagers, and
Yeah.
relationships are no different. So like, a relationship that only lasted like 3 months can feel so, big. And like, I think that's why you have almost these more exaggerated emotions in this
Yeah.
one, because like Practical Magic is about adults and this is about teens.
Yes, yeah. And in fact, the parents, if you think about it, the parents in Practical Magic are the main characters. Here, there's a like Robin Tunney has a parent, and he's not really important to the picture. I mean, he's ineffectual, and I'm certain that's how teenage girls see their fathers as being basically powerless to
Well, and the
aid them in the
importance of her
world.
mother is that she's a dead witch.
Right. Perfect. Yes. Yeah. And of course, the families aren't so. I mean, Rachel True has no family that we're aware of. Although they're clearly, presumably Catholic, I suppose. And Nev Campbell, I'm not aware of.
No, she has a mom who's
Oh,
pretty
she has
much,
the mom who's very caring and
yeah.
takes her to the doctor. Yes. And then Firuza Balk has horrible parents, like horrible.
Well, her mom seems to be okay. It's her stepfather who's horrible. I don't know
Yes.
Well, her
what the deal
mom
is.
is an enabler. I mean, they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
white
she's probably
white
an
trashy,
alcoholic.
and she doesn't. But that's the other part is part of the learning though. The mom, no, the mom is terrible because the monkey's paw part of that is they get the money and they're happy to get the money, but the mom hasn't changed. None of the things that are important that she could solve. Like, okay, finally, I don't have to live in low income housing or just run down whatever
Right.
and drink. But she's replaced. She still doesn't pay that much more attention to her daughter.
Yeah.
She places importance on, look at this couch, look at this jukebox, look at this thing I have, look at all this. Like, so the monkey's paw part of that. Like, her mom's still terrible. She doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation.
It
She's
makes me
definitely.
feel
I
so
wouldn't call her
sad for her.
caring. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Fairuza Balk's character, I guess we should go into the characters of the girls because and maybe it makes sense to start with Fairuza Balk because I think Nancy I think is the breakout character here, played by
She's
Fairuza Balk.
scary as hell, and
Oh,
she comes by it
the
honest.
the face that launched 1,000 memes.
Oh really? Is there a meme thing about Fairuza Balk? That's my age
Yeah.
talking. That's
Tons of memes with Nancy.
I can't wait. What's the general gist? Don't talk to me? Like what's
I mean, there's a lot of those, but the one I always think of is actually it's a meme suggesting that Nancy is Frankenfurter's daughter.
awesome. I love it. I mean, I love how there's a moment when Robin Tunney's the new girl and she says something to them and she just like Nancy just glares at her and it feels
No,
so
it makes me so uncomfortable. She's so
it's so great.
just
Yes.
scary. She's
No,
scary.
she is. I love her look. She wears this PVC coat that just shines. And it's so that she looks like a replicant in Blade Runner. And she's it's such she if you were her teacher, you would be so intimidated by this kid. I feel, like you would be constantly going, is this kid plotting to kill me? Does this kid think that I'm cool? There's no way this kid thinks that I'm cool. I'm so sad now. My kid, You'd be
I
worried
think you're
about
projecting a little bit on
you'd
this
be worried
imaginary
about
future.
living up to the expectations of these kids who are so much cooler than you ever were. Now I'm talking about myself. Um, so yes, she's amazing. By the way, this is the same year that she was in Dr. Moreau, and I remember that really clearly because no way was I going to see The Craft, but I definitely saw her in Dr. Moreau, and she was amazing in that. And that is not a good movie, but she she is really memorable in that film.
I mean,
Um,
I think I was surprised because as far as I knew, she kind of, I'm sure I saw other stuff, but she kind of fall off my radar because I saw her in Return to Oz, right, which
right.
traumatized my cousins or nieces. I think it was my nieces and nephews that went with my
Yes.
aunts, who I never realized how traumatic that movie was for like people just not too much younger than me, but young enough.
Tony, I haven't tried to watch it since it came out. I couldn't even tell you. Like,
I think it. I don't know. I kind of like have a
I'm sure
soft
it's
spot for
great.
that movie.
I
But
remember it
I
being
was like, oh wow, this is coming from Dorothy Gale to this is an interesting path, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, she was also in The Worst Witch and other stuff. But that was kind of like, oh wow, okay, this last
yeah.
time I really knew this person, they or saw this person, they were in Return to Oz. So
Now she's grown up, as it were, and turned
yeah,
into this vibrant character who
And she's
go
still
ahead.
the worst witch.
See, I didn't see The Worst
yeah.
I
Witch,
said she's
so
still the
I had
worst
just
witch.
missed out
Of
on
these, yes,
her.
of these four, she's definitely the worst one.
Yeah, I mean, I only looks like a year younger than myself, so it was one of those. Oh wow, okay, this person, around the same age, and now has grown up, and now we're the same age now.
What I find
Although
Well,
well after
interesting.
high school,
Go ahead,
Rachel
Joy.
True was almost 30 when they made this movie, so she's probably older than us.
Yeah.
right?
When when you see this movie, when Nancy allows the gang to come around and meet Robin Tunney, because they've been kind of hoping that they're gonna pick up a fourth girl who can help them do their witchy stuff. Uh, she warns Robin Tunney off of the smarmy but attractive Skeet Ulrich, and she is vulnerable at that moment. And it is a rare moment of vulnerability for this character. She does have she's doing such a good job with this role that every moment she gives us vulnerability, which happens often in the film, we feel like it's really special, like we're seeing through cracks in an armor. That's amazing. I mean, it's such a great performance because you're like, wow, I feel like I'm seeing a moment. Whereas all of these are just tools of the actor, But when she says, "Don't trust that guy. He spreads disease. He'll treat you poorly," you feel bad for her, and I don't know. I loved this performance. It was really cool. Um,
She's easily the best thing about this movie. I think, I mean, no disrespect to the rest of the cast because I think they all do well in this, but
right.
she created something that is iconic
Good point.
and I
Yeah.
think is a big part of the reason why this movie continues to be kind of a cult film. It's just like so many, she's a definitely a 90s style icon. She's definitely a goth style icon, like
Yeah.
in without this character in the movie, I do wonder if it would be
That's
on
a
the
good point.
same level that
Because
it's
if you
on.
just had Nev Campbell as Bonnie and Robin Tunney as Sarah, Rachel True as Rochelle, and somebody kind of boring as Nancy, it's hard to envision. Because you're right. If you take her out, the other three are not as. Yeah, you're right. It's not as memorable. I mean, Nev
Well, I
Campbell is
mean, you
always
might you
astonishing, but she's it's yeah. Go ahead.
I also kudos to the costume department because
Oh yeah,
she gets some really great outfits
Yeah, for sure.
to wear, and like you talked about, like the coat, she has like the dog collar at
yeah.
one point, like she some of them I question if a Catholic school would actually let you get away with it, but
A lot of what
like,
she wears is her
maybe
uniform.
we'll chalk that up to witchcraft.
Well, I mean, like she wears the
Yeah, but she takes
uniform,
a lot of liberties with it.
right? She's got her shirt untucked. I'm talking about early in the film. She's got the
It's like
skirt, but
Joe Polnichek.
The shirt is untucked. She wears a coat over it, and then she wears all this jewelry. And the question is, would they have had a dress code that said you can't be wearing like 3 different crucifixes and like a
I
bunch
If
think
it's a
they
Catholic
probably
school,
wouldn't
nobody
have let
cares if
her
you wear
have a.
no,
Yeah.
crucifixes are totally acceptable in the Catholic school.
Well,
Well,
no, I mean the nose. She has a nose ring,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think
no,
they would have let
that
her get
would've
away
I
with
have no
that.
idea. Yeah,
So Rachel True makes the point that the more into witchcraft they get, the shorter their skirts got. Just thought it was really funny.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a thing going on, even though, in the latter half, and at least in the third act, everything starts to go bad. The groups that they're abusing their power and everything starts to turn wrong. The big fantasy, the promise of the premise is that when they start to get their powers, everything starts to go great. So there's a secret world that's opened up to them. There's new power, there's new sensuality. They walk and they look awesome walking down the hallway. Everything that you want when you're growing up and becoming an adult is displayed here, where they come into their power and it is awesome. I could see wanting this to be a movie or a series where there's a first episode and a last episode, and everything in the middle is like the middle 45 minutes of this movie of just awesomeness. Yeah.
Well, they
And
also,
then
on that same flavor, they also start Nev Campbell with, mousiness a la Breakfast Club. Put your hair in
Yes.
your face,
yeah,
and then
greasy
and then
hair. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and then once she kind of heals herself, and that
Learns how
has
to wash
been
her
through
hair.
some trauma,
Yeah.
they definitely now, like, because she's pretty traditional in her uniform up
Yes.
until that point when she goes, hey, I can get guys to like me, or whoever, I can get whoever to like me because I'm confident now, and I'm going to go with that confidence. Definitely then she gets into the more like, hey, let's also adopt the goth attire.
And wash
And
her hair.
this is probably, I would maybe assume that this was also, there's a decent in 96, there's a decent amount of industrial music coming back, and
Mm.
fashion, but I think this, in my opinion, would, if I remember correctly, definitely brought back a goth sensibility.
Yes.
Definitely would be, hey, let's Hot Topic sales are going to go up. uh
Yes.
I mean, because again, like, that's where, if you can only go to the mall, like, a lot, there's many jokes about Hot Topic goth, but to be honest,
Hey, what's
that's
wrong with
where
that, man? I mean,
th-
yeah,
that's
they've
where you
they've
get stuff if you can't.
they've costumed these girls in ways that you can buy it off the rack. If you
Right.
take a snapshot of this, or if you get the VHS and you freeze it, you take a picture, you can go out to the vintage stores and to the Hot Topic and even Walmart, and you can buy the clothes they wear. Nothing here except for that beautiful leather jacket that Feruza has towards the end. Nothing here is out of your reach.
Yeah,
They
it's
all have
something.
leather at the end, though. I think when they're
Yeah.
at the beach,
Yeah,
Right.
they all have leather.
They all spend an extra $1,000 on their
No,
gear.
it's not
And
1,000.
that, and between that and Spencer's gifts, I
Well,
think
Feruza Balk has money at the
right,
end
she has
of
money at the
towards
end,
the
so
end of it.
maybe
So
she bought
like
them
Yeah.
it
coats.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about Feruza. Nev Campbell is, as always, really beautiful, but she's playing a character that is fairly simple. We are. It's a tough character in a sense, because we are intended to understand that she believes that her scars make her hideous, and so we're just going with that. That people sense a vulnerability about her, and so they victimized her, but mainly it's in her head, like, just exactly as you said, Tony. That's and when she gets rid of it, she realizes that she could have washed her hair at any moment, and but she is crippled by this
Well, it's
feeling of being
also,
burned.
yeah, but it's also, even when you have trauma, like, what we don't know exactly everything, but
Right.
there's always part of the confidence level part of what she doesn't have is, even if you put on long sleeves and could wear something really attractive, like,
Yeah.
you could have a dress, you could have whatever, you could dress appropriately. There's gonna be a time where you want to wear short sleeves, or somebody's gonna see you.
Yeah.
You take off your shirt. There's gonna be a point, in relations, where they're gonna see the real me and they're gonna run screaming.
Yeah.
Is the idea that's what kills confidence in that way. There's something about me that if it's revealed, and it's probably, she's been made fun of for, what's wrong with you, Freddy Krueger, kind of, like any
Yeah.
kind of thing like that, right? That because kids are terrible. I was a person who picked on, and I know that I have my own thing where I know somebody I kind of picked on at one point in time. I feel terrible about it now. I wish I could go back. It wasn't bullying like you see in like this or like trick or treat or anything, but and it was grade school. It's just, if that cycle is just ridiculous, and I don't know why as humans we decided to exhibit that. But that's her big thing is at some, like, I don't feel confident because no matter what, this terrible thing is lurking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that is one of the themes. Like I was saying, there's a bunch of themes and a bunch of symbolism. That is one of the themes, is that all of these things that they're dealing with are just symbolic of what real teenagers deal with. Like even Jason and I were watching this, like I said, this video about kind of making of or behind the scenes, whatever,
Yeah.
and three different middle-aged white dude creators of this movie talked about how they just wanted to make a movie that explored young women coming into their sexuality.
My God,
And
Jesus.
I was like, "Oh my
You
god."
sound like such a schmuck. Not you. Those dudes, and they
Yeah,
sound like me. They sound like such a schmuck talking about how much they want to explore the feelings of a teenage girl, and
Mm.
and I understand they mean well, but you really do kind of, first of all, wish that there were some female creators who were among them who
for
could,
sure.
like,
But
that,
anyway, but that
It
aside,
was it was
that
the
is obviously one of
90s
the themes.
though. So
right, yeah,
it was the 90s. It was the era of Josh Whedon, and we thought that all, like I feel like at that point in time the culture was like, I it was so starved for anything vaguely and that seemed vaguely empowering of women, that people didn't question it as much when it was coming from a middle-aged guy.
Mhm.
yeah.
Like, like
This is
this that pro now 20 odd years later, that seems a lot more suspect.
I want to address this question towards Julia
But
because I feel like I want to get I don't know how to feel about this, because as as a white male creator, I still want to make stuff. I want to, like, if somebody said, "Hey, write a Buffy book," I would write a Buffy book. But I feel like there should be more spaces for women to write that Buffy book. And what's the what square circle this square for us, please? Like, can you help me make
Well,
sense of this?
so one of our mutual friends, I'm not going to name names, but one of our mutual friends is big on basically canceling white authors because it's time for authors of color, to be elevated and put forward. And it's a really complicated balance, because what you want is, you do want space for, for women and people of color and, LGBTQ and whoever, what any other marginalized population, for those folks to be able to create and have their creations be discovered. But the problem is that they don't just get discovered by existing. Like, so it has to kind of, so the way our universe has been set up is that, middle-aged white dudes are the ones who are visible, who get stuff out there. And so the question is, do we just say stop making things? That's not going to happen. Do we say let's pretend that it doesn't matter how many people actually want to purchase the thing when we, like, it's that's what I'm saying. So it's a very complicated balance, because you have, somebody has to make it so that those voices are being heard and being accessible. So I love that you're doing that, Jason, with your little publishing house, is that
Mm,
you're the middle-aged white dude, but you're saying let's bring in these authors of, various representing, diverse authors.
yeah.
And so that's, I think, a way to do it, but it's difficult. It's there's no easy answer, because I don't think the answer is, all right, all you white dudes need to now just go away and disappear and shut up. That's just not going to ever happen, and it's not how it should be. But we also need, like you said, to make space for other creators.
Yeah, I always also kind of one of my tenets is also, the people who are trying to do really good things have to work like 4 times harder because there's 4 times of me just bastards.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. But also, I've had something similar. I don't want to go too far off the rails, but I had somebody ask me like, hey, if it meant, you didn't write as much or didn't create, comics and stuff like that to give other people space, are you cool with that? And my answer, to me personally, my answer is, I mean, overall, yeah. I
Well, but nobody should
Aren't
ever
you
have to
already doing
there's
hate it.
equity.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of equity and equality, and it is very complicated. But the idea is all the people who want the good things, we all gotta kind of stick together and try to push for good people across the board. But it's extremely complicated. I don't
It
know
is.
all the answers. My answer is just be supportive of awesome people,
Yeah.
and keep being supportive of awesome people, and just keep
Well,
pushing
and
it.
don't get
Right.
your feelings hurt when somebody of a different group gets chosen
Oh, hell
over
yeah.
you, because it might be that, we need to hear from those voices.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. Like if I see something, somebody's like, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for." Like, don't be a jerk and go, "I could be that." Like, no, that's not what we're
Yeah.
asking for. Like, that's not. Stop it.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
It's clearly a false choice, by the way. Like if somebody says, "Hey, Jason, are you willing to give up your slot so that a diverse author can instead take that slot?" It's like we're always giving up our slots. I'm going to give up my slot today to somebody else. I'm going to give up my slot tomorrow. Somebody
It's
else is
not
going to
up
give it
to
up.
you.
So
yeah, it's not. Yeah,
that right. It's
I would
not.
agree with
That is a
that.
completely
Absolutely.
fake. It's a false, fake thing to be worried about. We're always competing. We're always giving up slots. So don't.
Yeah,
It's an
I don't.
absurd thing to worry about.
I have to also be honest, completely honest. If now that we are kind of a little off topic, it's complicated enough that I don't feel like I can say, like, I don't want anything I say to be an authority.
Oh, God knows what I say is not an
Other
authority.
than the fact that, like, I constantly try to be a good person and a good ally to everyone I can. Good people need to have voices, and I think, as a collective of people trying to be good people and be good humans, that to push that whenever possible. That's what we need to do. That's how I operate anyway. I'm not telling anybody else that they have to operate. That's my MO constantly.
Mhm.
And if you see an opportunity, like I'll see an opportunity, I'll share it with somebody, like, hey, I think you'd be great for this or that. And that's what I view. And I have, like, looked at things
One
and gone,
of
you
the
know what? I have a friend who I think, like, hey, friend, hey, person I know, or retweet something like, everybody, here's the thing, let's do this. I don't know, but I feel like it's much more
I know it
complicated
feels like
than
we're
this
off.
movie
I know
one
it
of
and
feels
the
stuff
like
like
we're off
that.
track, but
Yeah.
it was interesting.
one of the things, though, well, to this point, this is something I brought up in my opening thoughts, and I can steer us back towards the movie, but with this as a launching point, one of the things I do think that betrays this movie being written by men and not women is the relationship with the sort of bad guys that are in this movie. I think it
Oh,
affords
absolutely.
them more sympathy than if, like, you have the possibly sexually abusive stepdad
Oh
who
shit.
is
Oh,
Oh
that's
yeah,
killed,
yeah.
disgusting. Yeah, yeah.
and they kind of treat it like, oh, Nancy went too far, and that to me is debatable. He might be sexually abusive to
Yes.
Nancy, like,
Right. That
there's
was
some
right.
implication there. And then the way Skeet Ulrich's character arc is, like, okay, like, this is a fantasy movie, he is kind of under a form of mind control, but it also, there's a lot of implication that he was not a great guy even
Oh no.
before
No, he's
that.
awful.
There's a
And yet
weird forgiveness
you
of,
have,
like, date rapey crap from that. Like, there's a point where it's like
Well,
almost
that's
like,
true of the
oh, he
era.
was kind
well,
of under
she
a
even
spell, and I don't
says,
know. And like, nah, man, that guy was always that guy.
she even says, I think he's a nice guy
Yeah,
underneath
that
Uh-huh.
all of it.
that
Yep.
made
I
me
don't
skeeve me
think
out.
you would. I don't think you would have that dialogue in a movie that was actually written
So
by
I
women.
agree with you
I
completely
You
about
would.
that.
No. You would have it, but it would be definitely somebody else going, honey,
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Right, exactly.
Because I know that
Yeah.
we were making progress. I mean, if you look at like Porky's or any of the movies of the 70s and 80s, when definitely sexual assault was downplayed, definitely like all kinds of random victimization and sexual
Well, shit.
harassment
I
and
mean, Revenge of
voyeurism.
the Nerds.
Right, and rape by fraud and all those kinds of things were all sort of downplayed. So now we're slowly turning the boat around. But Jesus, I mean, yeah, and I don't know. You might have heard chauvinistic ideas like that, not only said by men, but probably parroted by women. And I, but now it's a long damn time ago. So now I think people do feel like they're in a very different place. I mean,
Here's hoping.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. That is interesting. Go ahead. Drew, I interrupted you. You were making you were
Well,
saying you were
no,
spinning us. Yeah.
you're adding additional thought.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that this movie kind of muddies up its messaging with this
Mm,
stuff because it's on one level, it's like, yeah, women, take your power back, take your power, smash the patriarchy, yada yada yada. But then it tries to make you feel bad for, well, even honestly, even the racist girl that's on the swim
Mm-hmm.
team, like
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
her
Yeah,
hair
just
starts
because she
falling
loses her
out,
hair,
and
she starts to be nice to the black girl. Why? That doesn't make no
I
sense.
I did think that like it was an interesting thing that she becomes a skinhead through that.
Yes.
Like the monkey's paw part of that was like, okay.
Well, that same
Yeah.
actress what played Ross Geller's girlfriend on Friends, and she's bald in that too. It's so funny.
Oh
Well,
yeah, I
people
forgot
like
about
to
that. That's
attack
funny.
that woman because of her hair is her strength, and so therefore it's what there's a hatefulness people have towards just how perfect that woman is, and so yeah, they go after her hair. Um,
She's Marsha Brady from the Brady Bunch movie.
oh my God, so
Right.
good. She's so good in that. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So it's clumsy and lazy that she gets or that her hair falls out and suddenly she's going to be nicer to the person that she bullied. To some extent the script is trying to skip a whole bunch of stuff because suddenly she's Rachel True is being nice to her and she's the only person who's being nice to her, and that's where it's coming from. But the point is the movie can't skip so many steps and get us to follow it. It's just not
well,
possible.
what they should have, they're trying to show, what they're trying to show is that these girls are now going too far. But what they should have done is maybe had them turn on somebody a little less deserving.
I
Like
agree.
maybe,
Right.
Yeah.
like like they
Like
could
a
have had them
nerd,
do
like a
something
nerdy guy or
worse to
something.
the
Yeah.
yeah
Well,
exactly, or maybe the occult bookstore owner or something, like it doesn't, like, the people that they terrorize, like, I can't say within the logic of the genre that I feel that bad for them. I mean, if this was, it's like I said last week, if this was a Friday the 13th movie, we would be cheering for Jason to put his machete through
Right.
these people's skulls. So, like, this seems kind of tame by comparison.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's a built-in need. It's a need maybe on the part of just Hollywood, but to see there be peace, to see somebody being, trying to heal these
Well,
relationships.
I think there's some part of it is the whole, Batman doesn't kill, or not Batman because he actually does, but theoretically Batman doesn't kill people, whatever. Superman, any of these people where it's like, oh, I don't kill people even if they deserve it because killing is wrong. So that's the idea here is like, okay, we know that these are bad people, but they shouldn't be they shouldn't be murdering anybody, and that's where, what's her name? It's Sarah. That's where Sarah differs from the others is that she's like, no, you've gone too far. No matter how bad these people are, they
Yeah.
don't deserve to be murdered.
Yeah. I want to like shift over to something else that I found really interesting here, and that is I love the character of the witch, for want of a better word, that they go to, who runs the magic shop, played by this Spanish
Spaniard,
actress
yeah.
named Assumpta Serna, and she is amazing. And it's not a big role, right? There's not a lot, like you got to think of the different kind of people that you could put. You could have Mr. Hooper from Sesame Street be in this role, and that might be interesting.
Yeah, she's basically the mother role because
Yes,
you know
right.
Sarah's mother's died.
But it's really cool I liked that role. There's another thing that I wanted to call out, and I haven't read. I'm sure there are long essays about this, but I like this film sort of as a queer subtext as well. It's interesting to me. There's this moment where they're wishing for another friend, and then when Robin Tunney comes into class, Nev Campbell notices her from across the room, and susses out through signals and subtle cues, in this case, that she can levitate a pencil,
Yeah, that's not
that
so subtle.
yeah, but it's subtle enough that nobody else notices. Only Nev Campbell. Nev Campbell senses that Robin Tunney is one of them and quickly wants to adopt her into their group. This is all an excellent metaphor for the queer experience, right?
Yeah.
And except again that the movie has to go somewhere. So in the end, the group is going to be torn apart, and their boss friend is going to be terrible. But I think as far of just like somebody else recognizing you, picking out of the crowd, recognizing there's something different about you, but that they understand you in ways that everybody else doesn't. There's beauty there, and I can imagine a queer audience really, really glomming onto this. I have read zero essays about this. I'm just wondering, and I'm sure that it's been touched on.
Hmm.
Uh,
I agree.
Gosh, okay. I, are there any other trends or themes that we should touch on on this film? We're not going to walk through the whole plot.
I had to actually, because of the presence of Nev Campbell and Skeet Ulrich, I had to go back and look and see how far away this was from Scream.
Same year,
And
isn't it?
it turns out they were, same year, mere months apart from each
Goodness
other, with
gracious.
Scream actually coming out after this. So
Hmm. Yeah, this is Nev
I
Campbell's
think
first big
that's
movie.
kind
She
of
was
cool.
on Party
Huh.
of Five, but she hadn't made a movie that was a big deal anyway. She might have made some small movie, but and then Scream happens.
The movie takes a turn towards Act 3, and that's when things start to fall apart, because basically every one of the girls who is using their power has started to abuse it. Julia, do you want to list how each of them is
Well, the
going
thing
too
is that
far?
I'm trying to think what the word is. The rule, I guess, is that
Yes.
everything comes back times three. Whenever you do anything, it comes back times three. So whatever, it's the whole monkey's paw thing, like Tony said. The idea that you're gonna wish something and it's gonna come back much worse for you, and
Yeah.
so in order for but since they can't see that because they've just completely embraced the evil, they're killing people and they're doing all these things, and they've turned on Sarah because Sarah's not on board with them, and so they're gonna try to kill her. They're supposedly have made her father's her they try to convince Sarah that her by with a like fake news story that
Yeah.
her father was on a plane that crashed and there were no survivors, and so basically, it's just one awful thing after another. And so she says, she casts a spell because she's actually the powerful one. The others are kind of not that powerful. They're just sort of tapping into her power. And so since she's the powerful one, she's actually able to make them see what is really what's actually happening. And so they look in the mirror, and the two girls, the one with the scars sees that she's all scarred, and the one who had the scars, and then the
Yeah.
one who made the other girl bald, now she's losing her hair, and it's like, and then of course you've got the most the most wicked one, I guess, to use that word,
Yeah.
um and that's what's the character's name again?
Nancy, played
Nancy,
by
yeah.
Fairuza Balk. Yeah.
Right, right. Nancy doesn't she's not seeing it. She's actually just really far gone. So there's all this stuff that's going on with that, or she's trying to bind her from doing evil, Nancy from doing evil. So you guys can talk a little bit more about it, but I just thought that was great. All of this, them just kind of being, and I, again, with the metaphors and the symbolism, I really feel like it's all when somebody goes down like an addictive path or some kind of path
Yeah.
where they've just gotten so absorbed with something that they can't see what they're in. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was looking at with that.
The writers had actually talked about how they felt like, since Nancy, it is hinted decided that Nancy had struggled with various kinds of addiction, that this would be yet another thing that she would use and then start to abuse,
Abuse it, yeah.
and that would make
Mhm.
sense. But Tony, you were talking about the grand finale-esque aspect of the of the ending inside the this beautiful sort of Spanish colonial mansion that Robin Tunney lives in. Um, there's like Indiana Jones level amounts of snakes. There's
Yeah.
there's
Bugs. There's, they try to. I mean, going back to the news report, it's not just that they say her father is killed, but it's because everything's gotten weird and he just left her. Like, so they want her to kill herself, or at least for it to look like she
Right.
killed herself.
Mhm.
Is the big thing, because then they kind of could be off the hook. And also, hey, look, she's tried this before, so why wouldn't that happen?
Yeah.
So they're wishing
And
her
they
the
try to
worst.
get her. They have a fake note that says that she actually killed.
Oh yeah, that she
I guess
killed
Skid
the.
Ulrich. Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea is, hey, let's shift the focus to her. She's not playing ball. We can wrap this all up. Of course, it turns out that she reconnects with her mother and finds her inner, witchy strength and defeats them. But it's still that. And again, it's also the sense of betrayal and the kind of inner turmoil of women in high school, girls in high school. Like, how does that all work? Because there's a lot to it anyway. Just going
By the
through
way, we
high
totally
school.
did do that light as a feather, stiff as a board thing every slumber party I went to.
Yeah, see, Rain was asking that too, and I was like, I don't think many guys did that, if any.
no.
Like, I think this is definitely I didn't hear of anybody doing it where I was. Definitely, I don't think it's a guy thing, hardly at all. It's possible, but in general, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's teenage girls.
Somebody could come in and say you're totally wrong, but it did seem more of a sleepover slumber party kind of.
Mhm.
Let's try this kind of thing.
Yeah, we definitely did not. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, girls' inner life is way more fascinating than guys. So that's yeah. No, it's true.
Okay. They said that and I don't know if this is hype. If they were just trying to make to like get the publicity for the movie or whatever. But they said that some of the stuff that they were doing was real, as far as the the spells or the incantations or the chants or whatever. And so when they did the spell the casting at the
Despite
beach.
the fact that there is a completely made up pagan god in this.
Yes,
Sure.
yes. Well, he was made up, but that doesn't matter because a lot of the other stuff was real. And so they said that when they were doing it at the beach, that the tide actually would get higher every time they did the thing, and then
I absolutely agree with Robin Tunney. That sounds like publicity for the film, and it's enjoyable to watch her roll her eyes at all the talk, and it's fun because it gives us a nice frisson. All right.
Well, I mean, also though, to that point, like, it does make good stories.
Yes.
It's like, I forgot who it was. I think it was Alice Cooper, where he said, "Did you, somebody asked him, like, did you, did it do this or that?" I can't remember. Was it stepping on like, he did something,
Oh,
and then
no,
somebody goes, "Don't ever tell anybody you didn't do it."
that was
know?
Ozzy. Ozzy had the bat.
Ozzy-
It was
No,
Ozzy
it
and
wasn't.
San
But it was
Antonio.
Alice Cooper was also
Oh.
Oh,
did a
really?
thing, and then
Huh.
somebody goes, "Did you didn't do that?" Right? He's like, "Oh no, of course not." Like, don't. And then they were like, "I'm sorry, I'm vague on the details. Again, I'm gonna
Yeah.
beg off that I haven't had a lot of sleep lately." But the idea was, he's like, "No, don't tell anybody. Like, just keep the mystique."
Sure.
So
Absolutely, that's
as you're
magicians,
promoting,
you know?
there's worse things you can do to promote the craft than say, "Hey, some of these spells seem to really do the trick."
I know. I love that. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to our final thoughts, and if there's something you feel like we failed to touch on, it's a great opportunity to grab it and touch on it. But we went Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. So final thoughts. Drew, what a fun conversation, some of which actually makes it through to the version of this show that the audience is listening to.
I didn't really divulge my opinion on the ending. I will say that I wish the ending feels a little too quick to me. I don't like the ending that much. But I do enjoy this movie, and I definitely enjoyed the conversation, and I think it also does feel very yet again, is a movie that feels very Halloween forward. So I think, the witchy movies have definitely been helping me get into the spirit of the season.
That's so
And
nice. Yeah.
yeah, fun movie with an iconic performance, and certainly a poster that I saw on many of my friends' walls in the late 90s, early aughts.
Sure.
So yeah, good conversation as always.
Thank you so much. Julia, what about you?
Well, I am convinced that I'm going to start practicing witchcraft from now on.
I
No, I'm
think that'll
kidding.
be fun.
No, I really enjoy it. I think it's fun. I think, yeah, of course, there's some problems with just the fact that it's of a time and whatever. But I think the performances are great, and it's scary where it needs to be scary. And I don't love, like I say, I knew that that Nancy would end up in an asylum. That was like, there's no other way for this to go, I don't think. Or she's dead, but I think, yeah, that was not that surprising. It's depressing as hell, but it's not that
Yeah.
surprising. I think that the rest of it was fine. I didn't have a problem with, because the actual ending, aside from Nancy being in the asylum, is that we've kind of find out that she has managed Sarah has managed to bind all of them, or the other girls just never had much power because they don't have any power anymore, and she still does. And so I thought that was kind of fine. I thought that was a good resolution, that they're not going to go around killing any more people.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Tony, did you have a good time?
Yeah, I think the ending for me, for while we're watching, I think the ending in the asylum was even more bleak than I think warranted.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if again, I don't want to say like, oh, you should have done the movie like this or that, but certainly bad times feelings, I don't know. Something about it didn't quite sit right for me, but it does make it interesting in that, the price she pays is actually way higher than anybody else.
Yeah.
But it is kind of rough because, she's been through the most out of all of them as well, right?
Yeah.
Like her home life and everything has been screwed up
A really excellent point. Yeah.
since and so through her abuse of empowerment, we get to the end, and that's a super bummer. Like, we get the impression she's not coming back from that. I mean, she did try to get her friend killed by looking like she killed herself
And
and
she
frame
killed
all
other
that
people.
stuff and killed other people. So, I guess it is kind of the cautionary tale in that respect.
Yep.
But something about the way it all plays out and her, just really going for it as far as that performance at the end feels even more like, man, that
Dark.
is dark and tough. And so, but yeah, I mean, it was a cool movie to rewatch, and kind of definitely, like I said, since I pay attention to the music side of things, I was like, wow, it all kind of came back. It's not a soundtrack I own, but it certainly is here's what's going on at this particular point in '96.
Yeah.
Especially, I was looking through the list of bands, like, oh yeah, wow, they did this, and because they're not the same, they're not the radio hits. Some soundtracks are like, oh, we're just going to get the radio hits, we're going to put them all in this, we're going to do needle drops across the board. They didn't do that, but they did get a lot of famous artists. So this kind of time capsule thing, and it leads to more gothiness, more witchcraft in mainstream, for better and worse, depending on how you think about it. So I think it's an interesting point in time. I'm glad we discussed it. Definitely a nice segue into spooky season.
Absolutely. I think with the way that that Nancy in this film winds up, you think about stuff like Buffy, which is always borrowing tropes from like Marvel comics and soap operas. A character like Nancy in a series would disappear from the show for 6 or 8 months and then inevitably return either as a bad guy or reform, one of those, like, and probably through the course of several years, both of those at various times. So if you live in this universe, we haven't seen the last of Nancy. Just because she's down right now, she's not out. What a neat film. I'm so happy that I'm not even certain that I'd ever seen this before. So it's because I had no memory of it at all, and it was really fun to check out. So, all right, let's do. By the way, we have no idea what we're back for next week. Let's do our endorsements. Drew, obviously you're covered. You want to talk about that, or what do you got?
Living with Chucky, which is a documentary about the Child's Play franchise, obviously. That is on Screenbox. I watched it over the last week, kind of in pieces, because this was my birthday week. I didn't end up being at home very often, and actually I was out in the hill country for a good bulk of the weekend. Yeah, I think if you enjoy those movies and enjoy the character, I think you will get a lot out. It has all of the major franchise players on it, and it's a cool little documentary. I also just tonight watched El Conde, or in English, The Count, which is a new movie on Netflix. It's a vampire movie, and it's a horror. It's described as a horror satire. And I'm going to probably mispronounce it, but the idea behind it is that real life Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is actually a 250-year-old vampire.
Sweet.
I described it to Jamie is, imagine if Wes Anderson made a Dracula movie. That's my description of it. And I think your enjoyment of it or your annoyance of it will be largely based on that description. If that does not sound like something that would amuse you, then I would say steer clear of it. However, if the quirkiness of that appeals to you, I think you'll get something out of it. So yeah, those are my two endorsements this week.
Lovely. Julia, did you have anything for us?
I don't think I have anything this week. We just finished up, the Shrinking thing that I've talked about last week. That's first season, and we loved it. It was really, really interesting. Been watching The Morning Show. I've been watching Only Murders in the Building. So same things I said before, still great. And then I'm looking forward to Loki season 2 this week starting up.
Sweet. Tony, do you have anything to endorse?
You mean besides 30-something movies?
Right.
You should definitely catch up.
Which ones in particular do you want to highlight here?
There's a lot, and I kind of did highlight them. I mean, again, I'm going to go with When Evil Lurks, director of Terrified, one of my favorite horror movies from the past few years. Brings it back in a major way, but there's a lot of others. I mean, our slate of Christmas movies, I think, is definitely set. In my opinion, I hope I'm gonna shill for them. Is There's Something in the Barn, and also Sacrifice Game were in there big time. So I think there's a lot. I hope that people go back and listen to my recommendations that I've been filing from Fantastic Fest. And Drew, I'm glad you checked out the Chucky documentary, because that was in Fantastic Fest last year. I was shilling for it.
I think I remember you telling me about it.
Yeah, because I was like, dude, you got to. This is for you, man. I mean, it was for me too, but. And the filmmakers did Q&A, and it was really great. They had the real deal Chucky doll around as well, so that was really awesome. It's a very sincere documentary, and really fascinating in a lot of ways. So part of, I don't want to sell it too much yet again, but part of Fantastic Fest for in relation to the podcast is also I'm able to go, ooh, hey, this is coming out, we should check it out, And this year it was totally an embarrassment of riches as far as, I easily could have seen twice as many movies, at least. I think I want to say there was something like 95 selections you could choose. So there's some really amazing stuff across the board, but I want to get again, I did a few side podcasts about that if you're interested, and then I think we're going to post what I saw there, so I want people to come and ask.
Yes.
Although also what's kind of cool is I haven't had time to sit down with it because I've been out and then I was catching up on work today. But the novelization of Godzilla Raids Again has been translated and got released. So that's really cool. I've heard good things about it from people I trust. But when it was first announced that, hey, we're bringing this over to the States, we're going to have this translation of Godzilla Raids Again, I of course had to pre-order that. So it's been a bit, but I'm stoked. I'm also, of course, looking forward to, I haven't seen the official date yet, but Trick or Treat is finally coming out in 4K, and I'm anxiously scouring the internet for what day I can try to buy that, even though I should not spend the money. So yes, that's we'll be talking about the Fantastic Fest horror movies throughout the year, I think, as they get released, and I want to cover as many as possible because I think they definitely fit in with our sensibilities overall. So I think there's a lot of good stuff there to cover.
Excellent. Do you know that I have no endorsements this week? Same with Joy. I've been very heads down working on stuff, and I just didn't get a chance to absorb anything else. But I did absorb that there's no The Craft novelization, and that's amazing to me. That there's no novel version of this. I mean, this is the late '90s. At that point, novelizations were still a big deal.
Well,
So
I mean, you're a white dude. Why don't you pitch writing one?
I know, right? I'm totally qualified.
Oh my.
Clearly, yeah. Obviously, it should fall to me. If I had the rights to do this, I would just simply throw it up to the writer communities and part of them saying, I'm looking for a woman to write this novelization because that would be great. I would love to read a novelization of this.
See, that's where you could get a good retelling that contextualizes it from you know what? I was in high school. Like, like I feel like that contextually, see, that would be,
and any
really
given
good.
writer, she very well might go, but look, remember, I'm just one person, so I don't
Sure, of
necessarily
course.
stand for every. But the point is, when we have a flood of them, then we'll begin to get a more, a feel for all the varieties of people's opinions. So yeah, I wish I had the rights to this so that I could publish somebody's novelization of it. I'm not saying that out loud so that somebody writes me and says, oh, well, here's the rights, although I would take them. Okay.
You never say never.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't that be awesome though? Like
That
if you're like,
would be. Hey, if you
wouldn't
have the
that be
rights to
your
this
kind of
movie,
manifestation of calling into,
really
like,
good point.
Well, Jason
what
doesn't
if you
believe in
did?
spirits, so
Well,
I
what
guess
if you?
not.
But what if you did manifest the
I
craft, right? The
believe that.
the novel rights of the craft coming into your purview, and
There you
then
go.
you get a really good author who's not you to write it. Wouldn't that would be that would see that would
That would
that
be
I
my
think would
witchcraft
point.
that I
Yeah.
started
See, there you go.
working.
All right. Well, if somebody out there has to the rights to the craft and you want to call me about it, I'm sure we could work something out. All right. Everybody have a fantastic week. I don't know. We'll decide in the next couple of days what we're going to watch next. I have no idea. Literally at this point,
October 6th, When Evil Lurks, the movie I was just saying, by director of Terrified, is coming out in theaters October 6th. So you could start your spooky season right with a harrowing. I don't know how widespread, how many theaters it's going to be in, but if you liked Terrified and you want to get creeped out and scared and horrified, October 6th is your day for When Evil Lurks. So, and then I think it's on Shudder, if I'm not mistaken, the 27th. So we might, if we can't catch it in theaters, we might catch it at the end of the month. So I want to put on everybody's radar just in case.
Coolio. All right. We'll let that be it. This has been a delightful conversation. Everybody be kind to one another, and I can't wait to talk to you guys next time. This is so much fun. Thank you.
Night.
Night.